Okay, hi. It seemed like there were a lot more of us out there. Just those loud little cutie pies. So thank you so much. I'm Amy Baker with Mountain Youth. I'm the Family Education Manager. And before I introduce Jenny Wu, our speaker this evening, I would like to thank our generous sponsors. There's a few of them: Eagle Valley Behavioral Health, Vail Health, Alpine Bank, Vail Resorts, Epic Promise, Slifer Smith and Frampton Foundation, the towns of Avon, Eagle, Gypsum, and Vail, the Eagle River Foundation, Vail Valley Cares, SAMHSA, Wells Fargo, the Colorado Office of Behavioral Health, Eagle County Government, and the Inn at Riverwalk. So welcome to tonight's interactive presentation with Jenny Wu on Essential Conversations to Inspire. Jenny Wu is a Harvard-trained educator and TEDx speaker. Jenny delivers her research and career to helping people realize their potentials from classrooms to boardrooms. She's worked with children and families as a school administrator at a network of Montessori schools, with college and graduate students as an MBA career coach and instructor at UC Berkeley, with new and seasoned employees at Deloitte Human Capital. She's been a Cisco HR manager and later an executive coach in Silicon Valley, and now works with older adults as a cognitive science and memory researcher. She is completing her PhD work at UC Irvine School of Education, where she conducts intervention-based research in social-emotional learning, emotional regulation, and resilience. She is the creator of a series of award-winning life skills games. Her games have been featured by Harvard University and Castle. They've won the 2018 Parents' Choice Awards and are used by parents, teachers, counselors, and therapists in over 50 countries. A social entrepreneur with a successful track record, she was previously the founder and CEO of a creative children's design company, and her work was featured as a part of the centerpiece for Michelle Obama's Let's Move Kids State Dinner at the White House. So how mind-brain parenting got started? Well, Jenny was at Harvard Graduate School of Education with a focus on developmental cognitive neuroscience. She realized her true calling: to level the playing field so all parents can gain access to insights from the best child development experts, psychologists, neuroscience, counselors, and researchers. And we're lucky to have her here this evening. Jenny Wu, thank you for making the trip to be with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Amy, for the very thoughtful introduction. And I cannot say just how excited I am to be here with you in person and over Zoom tonight, to be able to talk about some really important things. And I just have to say, you know, I was browsing the calendars of all the events Mountain Youth has to offer, and I was salivating because where I live, we don't have a community that offers a vibrant and rich plateful of activities and events as here. So I'm just really grateful to be here to share part of your community experience. So what Amy did not mention is that, like many of you, I am also a parent. I'm a parent of 3 wildly different children, and 2 of which are twins. So 3 of my children are elementary school age, and you know, I saw some lovely, lovely children running around, and so I would love to get to know you a little bit in terms of your age group of children. So if you have a child who is, I would say, preschool and younger, can you raise your hand? Okay, we have some amount. What about elementary age? Ah, we have a lot of elementary. Okay, middle school and high school? Okay, it sounds like for those of you on Zoom, here in person, we have a good spread with a number of students or children in elementary school age. So today, I'm going to really address the wide spectrum, and I'm going to address how conversations can be essential and relevant for these age groups, yeah? Okay, so first of all, I really want to acknowledge just, you know, we as caregivers and parents, we've gone through a lot. And the fact that you're here, right, whether it's in person or on Zoom, tells me a lot. You are here to support your children and your family. And so I commend you for taking that time. So tonight we're going to really make it as useful as we can be. For some reason I can't advance the slide. Yeah, but as we're trying to get it to work, it's in terms of the agenda, we're going to be really talking about, what mental health is happening. Oops, I got it, thank you. Some of the trends that I'm seeing in terms of mental health during COVID, right? And then what is happening in terms of our children's social and emotional wellness? And what are some of the developmental needs that research, the latest advancements, are telling us? And then we're really going to focus the bulk part of tonight on the how, right? Because you can attend a discussion, a lecture, or whatnot, and then you walk out of the room and you're like, okay, this is great, but how do I do it, right? How can I do it now, today, right? So that is really my focus. What can we do after we walk out of this room tonight? And then I'm going to give you some essential takeaways that you can use. Okay, and we'll leave some time for Q&A. But honestly, I like to make things interactive. So if you have a burning question, right, on something I'm already talking about, feel free to raise your hand and I can address that. And for those of you on Zoom, feel free to type into the chat. Okay, yes. Oh, sorry about that. Will you hear me? Okay. Okay. I want to make sure those on Zoom can hear as well, so let me hold the microphone. But usually I'm really loud, so you don't quite need a microphone. Okay. So for those of you, especially elementary schoolers, sorry, can't seem to advance. For the elementary schoolers, have you heard of the series of books called I Survive? Yeah, I see head nods. Okay, awesome, yes. And I even see a child raising his hand. Okay, so you've read like I Survived Blizzard, the Great Depression, and whatnot, right? And lo and behold, I survived. And this was brought to my attention as I was struggling in my household with the whole Omicron wave. I got 3 kids, 1 came down, and then I'm like, how do I isolate and do the other one? What do I do? And then the other one, and then the one that was on staff looked at me and said, oh, Mommy, this is just like I survived. And at the time I was like, what? And then I realized, oh my gosh, so obvious, right? So next month marks the 2-year mark of the pandemic. Can you believe it? Because with me, I just can't seem to tell apart between 2020 and 2021, right? It seems to be all blurred together in terms of experiences. So anyhow, this shared experience that we go through, our little ones, youth, go through, are now coined as Generation Pandemic. Right? And it's really about the social distancing, the emergency online learning, the unemployment, right? The job stress, the food scarcity, the so many distress that we have encountered and continue to endure to today, right? And so this has great implications to our children. And I'm sad to say that many that are yet to be a parent as of now. So what is a parent, right? So we've started another school year, academic year, right? And looking at the research and in talking with my colleagues who are teachers in the classroom who see it from day in, day out, at the preschool, elementary level, what we're seeing is that the students are a bit distracted. Behaviorally sort of listless, right? They kind of get up and would just like roam around the room if they're not engaged, right? And we can see that as a byproduct of learning on Zoom, of online. And at the middle school level, we see a lot of behavioral issues, right? In terms of acting out or trying to get attention. And, these are just results of the sort of implications that our children have gone through. And so how do we address that, right? These are some of the things that I suspect that you're here and wanting to learn more of, right? And for those of you who raised your hands in terms of high school level, I was just having this conversation with a friend who teaches for the 9th and 10th graders. And, he was kind of just like, wow, I've never seen anything like this before, because a lot of his 9th and 10th graders have what he's called the emotional maturity of a 6th and 7th graders. They were not turning in assignments on time, a bit disengaged, and he was trying so hard to figure it out, right? Our teachers are definitely going through so much at the same time, right? So what can we do, right, to make up for this social and emotional loss? And, in what ways can we be the rock, right, the foundation for our children? So as Amy mentioned, I teach emotional intelligence, and what you see already here are sort of 3 emotions that I ask my students that they would like to work on to get better at handling, right? Some of the bigger words are the words that are now commonly identified by students, right? So some of the themes you see are stress, anxiety, loneliness, sadness, right? And then there is the irritability, impatience, frustration, right? Inadequacy, overwhelm. And then I also have students who put happiness because they just have been feeling so numb that they don't even know how to really feel that happiness and have it prolonged, right? So these are some real things. And I was just looking at the stats, right? In terms of mental health related emergency room visits, those really rose during the pandemic by 25% for 5 to 11-year-olds and 30% for 12 to 17-year-olds. And then we also have a lot of 120% increase in terms of eating disorders, right? Suicidal ideations, especially for, identified female students. So more than ever, right, we as parents, whether parents, grandparents, right, caregivers, educators, we need to be here for our children. But of course, again, it's easier said than done, right? So how do we do that, right? So how many of you are sort of struggling with this problem? Why won't my child listen to me? Can you clap? Clap if you are feeling it. Clap harder if you know somebody else who's feeling it. Yeah, okay. I am definitely feeling, and I suspect you on Zoom are feeling the same way. We get pretty much claps around the room, right? So the reality is we want to help our children, but we're not being heard. We feel like they are not listening to us, right? And you did take a peek at the next one, right? But now put on the hat of your child, right? If your child were to be in this room, would they clap for this? Would they agree? I heard yes. Can you clap for your child? Be honest. Okay. You know, I have to say, I hear exactly the same amount of clapping for the first one and the second one. So what does that tell us, right? Why can't my parents stop lecturing me? Why is that, right? Okay, so this quote from James Baldwin, right? What does it say? Children have never been very good at listening to their elders, but they have never failed to imitate them, right? And that is why, my friends, tonight this talk is called The Essential Conversations and not The Essential Lectures, because we know lectures do not work, right? You get the eye roll, especially for the older children. Oh, no, not again, right? And notice the word imitate, right? Imitate, what does that mean, right? Another word for imitating in research is mirroring, this act of mirroring one another. So imagine, right, I see somebody nodding heads, makes me want to nod, right? I'm smiling, maybe you're smiling behind your mask, right? And we're having this conversation. So the act of imitating and mirroring actually is very, very common, and it's part of having a conversation where you are mirroring attitudes, language use, you're paraphrasing each other to understand each other, right? Maybe I cross my legs or arms and you do that, right? That is an act of connecting, right? And so conversations that I'm talking about are really ones aimed at connecting and building this trust, this relationship. So it's a two-way street, right? as we can relate to, right? In order to hear, in order to be heard, you have to hear, and vice versa. Okay, so next one. Why can't my child show me some respect? I see some smiles. Anybody want to clap for this one? Anybody dealing with? Okay, yes. I feel the same way sometimes. Okay, what do you think your child is going to say in return? Ready? Yeah, respect me? Okay. Yeah. Why can't my parents trust me? And if your child were to be here, would they clap for this one? Okay, I do see some shaking heads. Okay, good. And I have some smaller claps, not as much as the one. Good. Okay, previous. So my point is, right, so this is a quote by Julia Taymor, who is an American director. One of her best-known work is the stage theater adaptation of The Lion King. And she says, because my parents had given me tremendous respect, trust, and freedom as a child, I knew how to take responsibility for myself. If you're constantly being told, no, don't do that, or we don't trust you, you can't develop that responsibility. So I have a sense that you're valuing the respect and the trust, right? But I also want to highlight that this is actually related to self-motivation, because another common complaint that we get as parents is, why do I have to tell my kids everything what to do, right? Why can't they just be self-motivated, proactive, and do what they need to do? Well, guess what? If we're constantly telling them what to do, right, they would just check out, because guess what? I have a safety net. My mom is going to tell me. My dad's going to tell me what to do. I don't have to think about it, right? Or if we're constantly commanding them to do something, how do you think that self-motivation is going to be developed, right? There's less of an opportunity. And, I think Amy might have shared my TEDx talk. In it, I talk about helicopter parents or lawn mowing parents where, we want to protect our children, right? We want to tell them what's right, what's wrong, right? But if we do everything for them, including moving the obstacles out of the way, hence mowing that lawn, right? Clearing their path, they don't ever get to try out their own abilities. So again, that goes into their self-confidence, right? They may feel like, why do I even try? My mom is going to do it. I don't know if I can do it, right? So that's another balance that we have to think about. And really, the cycle of gaining trust and respect from the children, right? Again, like conversations, it's a two-way street. We've heard of the common phrase like, you have to earn my trust, right? You have to earn it. Well, it goes two ways, right? I think as parents, especially for the little ones, they look up to us, right? So genuinely. We are basically the superheroes of their life. And we know as they get older, they want to be exactly the opposite of us, right? And that is when trust needs to be earned, right? And proven even more. And how do we do that, right? So sometimes we tell them not to do a certain thing, and we do precisely those things. So I'm going to give you an example. So for example, I don't know if you do this, but I've definitely done this on multiple occasions, where I would tell my oldest to stop screaming at his younger sister while I'm screaming at my oldest. Yeah? So it's like you're telling them not to do something while you're doing exactly that same thing, right? And we don't notice it, right? So one thing to gain respect and trust is to walk the talk, right? So next time when you're screaming about somebody not screaming or hitting, pushing, whatever, check yourself, right? Oh, am I doing that? Oops, right? So that is an easy way of making sure that you earn their respect. Okay. So, next one. How do I help my child to stay away from bad peer influence, right? So we're talking about trust. Some of you might be like, well, I trust my child 100%, right? But I just don't trust the people that they hang out with. right? That's a common thing, right? I don't know how their family is. I don't know, blah, 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 right? So I am going to shield them. I am going to protect my friend. I am going to dictate who they should be hanging out or influence that, right? That's only going to work for a certain period of time. And if anything, your child might push back later on, right? That's going to backfire. So what we need to think about is really equipping our children with the skills to be able to make good decisions, make good choices, right? To have a good head on their shoulder and be like, you know what? I shouldn't hang out with these people, or they want me to do a certain thing, and I thought about it, and it's just not worth it, right? Or it's not the right thing to do. These are the type of skills, reasoning skills, and social and emotional skills that we would want to embed into our children instead of, don't do this, right? Bad influence, things around that. So what would our child say, right? Anybody do this? Why can't my parents stop comparing me to my friends, right? We talk about, we don't want them to hang out with bad influences, but we certainly talk a lot about the good influence. Perhaps in a way, sometimes we say, well, so-and-so did this, or why can't you do that, right? And it's really our way to try to motivate our children. But sometimes if in conversations, we have to watch out for that because so Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So these days and age, right, our children have experienced already enough comparisons from social media, right? There was one of the latest studies using Instagram and saying how teenage girls, the more they use, the more depressive symptoms they show, right? Kids already compare themselves enough, right? And that picture perfect thing. So I think it's important to help them understand that we're on their side. And, one thing about parenting that's completely different from any other types of mentorship, friendship, caring, is that parenting, when it comes to love, it's unconditional love. We know that, but sometimes we don't act that way, right? Sometimes we are communicating this message to our kids saying, I will love you more if you become the child, or certain quality, gain that quality that I like you to become. And this is like entirely subliminally, right? But since I teach at the college level and the graduate level, what I've been doing a lot in my course is that instead of teaching my students things, I'm actually helping them to unlearn the stuff that they've learned. And those things, including the type of negative self-talk, the labels that they put on themselves. And so I want to say here, language matters tremendously. I mean, I can, this is the research I do, and I look at my students' writing, their reflection, their talks one-on-one with me, and some of the things that they struggle with are very much these types of self-labeling and self-talks and self-comparisons that they have. And many of them, they mentioned, are stemming from their upbringing, right? So I think having those conversations is to really, number one, to show them that we are here for them. We love them for who they are unconditionally, right? And we're here to help them grow, but we are here for them. So that's one thing that, I know myself as a parent really needs to watch out for, right? I'm not here to make my child feel inferior, right? Okay, so again, here are some takeaways, but why is it so hard, right? Why is it so darn hard? Because on paper, we know we're supposed to do this, right? But why is it so hard? And, I have to say, this is hard because unlike math, history, whatever the core subjects, right? We were never taught how to communicate effectively, especially with our students, our kids, right? We were never taught in terms of like how to understand, how to hear and be heard. And honestly, every child is different, right? And your own children can be completely different from one another, whereas one thing works with one child, but you know it's not going to work with the other one, right? There's no manual. And that is why it is so darn hard, right? Try to get your child to apologize, right? Apologize to their sibling, right? Or you trying to admit to your child, oops, I screwed up, right? That's really, really hard. And getting your child to stop those impulsive behaviors, right? And it's a daily type of struggle. And I'm going to share with you exactly why. So my point is, these sets of skills are not only for children, but really for us as well. It honestly starts with us, starts from the inside, because role modeling is so incredibly important. And having the skills of emotion regulation for us and building those emotion literacy, which I'll talk about, is also incredibly important. And, you know, one research I want to throw out at you is that well, actually two. So research has shown that this latest generation is one that has expressed the most degree of depression, anxiety, and stress. And this was before the pandemic. So imagine now, right? And then another reason research came out and said, bear in mind, the other research is more around Westernized college students. However, you can imagine only now our next, generations of college students. What the research says is that we're getting worse at being able to read other people's emotions and being able to influence and to utilize these emotions, right? And again, that was a bit before the pandemic, so you can imagine these type of emotional reading, reasoning skills are really being impacted by the lack of opportunities we now have because of the pandemic. And so it's incredibly important that, we are here to help our children and to help ourselves. So what kind of support do our children need, right? So we talked about it's never easy. Why is it never easy? So I am going to just give you some research around brain development. And so if you see this slide, this shows the way brain develops. So I'm just curious, how many of you have heard that the brain doesn't actually fully develop until we're in our mid-20s? Oh God, very educated crowd. So you know what I mean. Anybody can tell me which part of the brain that sort of develops roughly last? Okay. Good. Okay, I'm preaching to the choir on this, so I'll keep it short. For those of you on the Zoom, for those of you not too, so neuroscience research shows that the front part of our brain, which is called the prefrontal cortex, roughly, there's a bunch of different regions within, but that is the region where we call the rational brain. Right? That is our air traffic control center, where it takes in information coming in, it digests, reasons, and try to prioritize and triage what we need to do and how to do so in the most responsible manner, right? Good choices. But that is the part of the brain that develops last. And interestingly, I say this, emotions, big emotions comes before big picture thinking. So for many reasons, for survival reasons, right, the part of our brain that really matures quite rapidly and definitely before our rational center is our emotional part of the brain. And that part of the brain is incredibly useful for survival purpose, right? So in the olden days, right, if you see a tiger, right, what do, right? That's a sense of fear, right? And it elicits a response just like that, right? You can fight the tiger or run as fast as you could, and then there's a third one where you freeze, maybe try to be as quiet as you can. This really happened in the woods, right? So you're not being heard. However, nowadays, we don't have tigers roaming around the streets, right? So these big emotions of the fighting, the adrenaline boost, right? The everything are now saved for us parents. Yes. And that is, you are the tiger. And that is why you get the fighting back, the tantrum on the ground. As my little one likes to stomp her feet, stomp, 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 right? They all have their thing. So unfortunately, we are the tiger, and these are the reactions you get. Very much for survival and well needed, but unfortunately, it develops before our children can really think thoughtfully and inhibit some of these big behaviors, right? And so, especially, I would say, between the age of 8 and 14, around the pubertal, growth periods, that is what scientists now call the second critical period. And that is a period filled with maturational, like structurally in the brain. And our brain is just so malleable. And that is also the period our kids are developing their own identities, right? And they're dealing with just so much bodily, neurochemical, changes, right? So I just, and I want to say that actually 50% of mental health disorders develop by the age of 14, and about 75 by the age of 24. And that is why this period is so incredibly important and malleable. And so 3 takeaways from here is that we need to check our expectations, right? We cannot expect our children to just completely be rational after you have reasoned with them, for another 15 minutes. They have the attention span of a goldfish, as we know, right? They get it, and then they forget it, right? And it's so funny because I was doing a talk, and at the end, a mom came to me and said, "Could you please explain this part to my partner? Because he somehow thinks that if he explains it, rationalize it, our 5-year-old will understand it. And he's frustrated because the 5-year-old doesn't just get it," right? And so it's so important that when we're in the midst of the stress, right, we need to think back to this picture and be like, that is why, right? I need to repeat it. I need to be patient. I need to level set my expectations. And then another one is that, again, it goes back to the skills and strategies. Because our kids don't have quite that, capability just structurally yet, we need to give them strategies to become self-aware of what's happening, right? In terms of their thought process, their behavior, and the skill sets. And we need to understand that this is, unfortunately, an ongoing process for us. We need to be here for our children, and the mistakes will be made over and over again, but better and better. Okay, so how do we actually do so? So I know you're here for the central conversation, so I want to start off by sharing with you this fairly recent discovery out of MIT Harvard collaboration by neuroscientists and cognitive scientists. And what they've found is that this back and forth exchange, known as conversation, or some people call it serve and return. So imagine playing tennis or pickleball, whatever sport, right? You serve it to somebody, they return it back, you serve it to somebody. There's an interaction element going on, right? Study actually find that it is the magic of doing this exchange that actually neurobiologically changes and develops our children's brain. And it's this act of mirroring back and forth. And so I don't know about you, but when I was a new parent, I would go to our pediatrician, I would go to the parent-teacher conference, and I would ask, well, what can I do with my child at home? Do y'all ask that question? And what answers do you get? So I've asked as many times, and consistently they say, read to your child. Yeah, I see head nods, yeah. And when I worked in schools, I also gave this advice, and this was basically the advice that was communicated, right? But there's a misconception on it. It's really about shared reading experience. Again, the back and forth conversations that actually helps your child, for example, to build vocabulary, right? Build comprehension. And it's not about dumping words. Again, AKA lecturing, right? So again, that is how we need to communicate. And another sort of related research is that researchers have sort of observed how parents talk to their children or while they're reading to their children, right? Those who just literally reads or reads and asks some yes or no questions, did Susie go home here? Or those who ask referential questions like, what's that? What is happening, right? Or those who ask more advanced questions as in, what do you think is going to happen, right? The referential and the advanced questions are really those that engages and boost this type of interactive learning. So I'm going to give you some tools, and so I just want to share with you. I know Amy mentioned, so I developed these sets of tools. I'm a parent, and I'm also the first person out of both sides of my parents to graduate from a 4-year university. So honestly, I'm all about practicality, and I'm all about accessibility. I don't want some research to stay in the ivory tower, right? I'm all about, well, tell me what to do. How can I do it now, right? So I created these sets of cards. Honestly, they're using playing cards, something we're all familiar with, to use to facilitate these conversations. And so today I'm going to share with you how do we do that. Okay, and then when COVID happened, I also created decks of mental health oriented cards because we couldn't do in-person therapy, right? And how can we do therapy continuously, affordably, in the comfort of our homes? So that's another one. And just to give you some quick background. So interestingly, I developed the cards really for parents, right, to do at home. But interestingly, now it's being used in 50 countries. At schools as well, which is surprising. And when I had done a bunch of research to understand why, it was because teachers are so overwhelmed and burnt out. They need resources too, right? They need something where I don't have to think about, I can just pull it out and I can do it. It's evidence-based. It works developmentally by age group. So I just want to share with you that. Different ways of doing it, whether it's solo in terms of reflective writing or practicing skills or playing a game. And lo and behold, adults actually started using it too. So I just want to tell you, we could use as much sort of development as we can ourselves. It really, again, starts with ourselves. So I started doing these talks using the cards to adults. About facilitating conversations. So I'm going to share with you some of the strategies from 52 Essential Conversations, Relationship, and Coping Skills. Can you hear me? Okay, good. All right. So first, anybody heard of social emotional learning? I know for Colorado, those social and emotional wellness. Yeah? Okay, so these are some of the stuff that schools are trying to kind of, there's some talks, right? I'm going to cut out the talks, the buzzwords, the whatever. I'm just going to give you the basics of what does it mean for my child and what is the most essential useful thing, right? In terms of their social emotional wellness. So the first one is self-awareness, right? We want our children to make good choices, right? What does it mean to make good choices? And it's about being able to recognize and understand their feelings, their thoughts, and their behaviors. And being able to develop, sort of understand, what am I good at, right? How can I take advantage and leverage my strength? And then there is self-management, which a lot of us hear is emotion regulation, which is, how can I manage my big feelings, my big emotions, right? So that is all about self-management and how do I set goals in my life. The third one is social awareness. And social awareness has to do with reading social cues, right? Which we know is very important these days, right? How can we give them as much opportunities as they can have to be able to read, social skills and understand what's appropriate and acceptable in different contexts and environments. And also, being able to handle conflicts, which has to do with relationship skills, right? How can they have healthy relationships, right? How can they set boundaries when needed, and working in teams? And the last one really is putting it together, making responsible decisions. So honestly, when we have conversations, and this extends to when we're lecturing at them, right? Most likely it's about these things, right? How can you make good choices? How can you understand what's happening, right? With you, with your friend, with us, the family, with the world, right? And how can you have better relationships when they are struggling? So I'm going to use this framework to show you a little bit. Okay, so I know a lot of you raise hands for preschoolers and elementary schoolers. We'll start developmentally with ages 3 to 7. So what you see here is children at this age use very concrete terms, right? They like to describe people, themselves, and physical characteristics. So this weekend, for example, I was playing in the playground on a seesaw with my kids, and then another kid came, and they had the brilliant idea of seeing whether I can stay down while they all kind of cram into the other side. And then, I forget the arrangement, but I was able to, hold my own. And then this kid said, "You're fat." So that's how it works, right? That's exactly how they describe, they use these words, non-sophisticated, but it's a fact, right? And, I don't want to digress, but they also can say, "Hey, why is she so dark," right? Or "Why is this boy wearing pink," right? Those are the opportunities where we tend to, shush them, right? Don't say anything, right? Because it's culturally inappropriate, right? But when you have these essential conversations with them, really to explain, right, an inclusive manner, to give them the type of language and understanding about diversity and what is happening, that is key. Kids notice these things. They just don't have the language to use it, right? So how cool would it be if we actually give them that language and skills to use instead of saying, "Why did you say this in public?" Shh, right? That is inappropriate. And they will start to think, this is taboo, this is bad, I shouldn't talk about it, there's something wrong, right? So that's something to really think about. And at this stage, they also are experiencing, again, big emotions, but they have no words to describe it, right? So I'm going to share with you how to build their emotional literacy. And then they are, they're starting to understanding what is socially appropriate, right? In the library, we keep it down. At grandma's, I can eat candy, right? And don't ask about this with mommy. So they're starting to understand the norms, and that's part of social awareness. And then they also are starting to, believe it or not, tolerate frustrations that they experience and have that delayed gratification. And they're gaining a sense of themselves where this is who I am. I am known as certain things that, I don't change, morph. This is, they're getting an understanding of self-awareness of who they are. So one thing you could do right now, actually, honestly, this applies to all ages, is helping them to recognize their emotions. As you've seen on the other slide, right? Why is it so hard? Because the process of, expressing emotions is really the last step. Before that, you first have to understand it. You have to label it. You have to being able to articulate it out loud, right? That's part of expressing. And then you have to regulate it. That's a multi-step thing that we adults don't quite even get it, right? So we have to start from the basics of labeling, recognizing these emotions. So make it a game element, right? Make faces of 5 emotions, different emotions, and have people guess them, right? Can you imagine? You can do this at home, right? And take off the mask, do it at home, and to help our kids practice that, because I can tell you, kids, especially those who have social anxiety or have learning differences, it's going to be an up-ramp, readapting going into school again. So the more you can do at home with simple, silly little games like this, the better it is to make up for those loss of opportunities to help them develop social and emotional reasoning skills. So one idea you could do, again, is, if you can't think of emotions, right? This is a nifty way of categorizing both what they're feeling in their body along with their emotions. And for those of you like taking screenshots or pictures, I think we'll share the slides. So you'll definitely have this as part of the toolkit. So this is like my cheat sheet for the little ones, right? So you can imagine at the top right quadrant, you have high energy with feeling of high pleasantness. So you can start with that sort of quadrant, say, pick one of these emojis at the top and make an expression, but don't tell me. See if I can guess it. And I'm going to do the same thing to you, right? So this will teach our children to recognize, hey, I'm feeling really high energy, right? But not so pleasant, right? What could that be, right? So it's starting to help them understand what they are. And then another way is you can also make this into a game where you can create a spinning wheel at the top where they can spin it, and wherever emotion it lands on, they can make that face. And it teaches them these emotional vocabulary, right? So now they don't just say, Mommy, I'm feeling so angry, right? They can really be more precise about, are they feeling angry because they're threatened by their younger sibling? Right? Or they are feeling hurt because you snapped at them. Or they're mad because something happened, right? These are very different things. And if you, like a doctor, can diagnose the specific symptoms, then you can address the remedy accordingly. And it's going to make your life so much easier, honestly. So I can't help but looking at Ragnar. So I'm a runner as well, and I've done multiple Ragnars, and I used to be a personal fitness trainer. So I'm all about like progressions and layering on, sequence and difficulty. So I'm going to give you a layer progression. Yeah. I was not kidding on the progressions. This would be like a plank holding it for, 5 minutes with, something else, that kind of progression. So this is all about precision of emotions. And as adults, we can use some of this, right? So, for example, I am feeling, confused, so disillusioned, perplexed. So you can imagine this works with high schoolers as well, right? And writing those essays, this is like your cheat sheet for that too. I'm feeling lonely, right? Is that more isolated or more abandoned? Again, I'm feeling mad. Are you furious or are you jealous of something, right? And I work with my students a lot to give them the differences between jealous, shame, guilt, embarrassment, right? Those things, because they are very, very different. And how you address it is very different as well. And how you feel it in your body is different as well, because, you can imagine feeling perhaps jealous. We have more activity, sort of redness. I see red, like we feel it more like smoking in the top, right? Versus feeling guilty, it's more of like that heart kind of thing. So it's very important if they can self-diagnose, right? And help you understand how to support them. Okay, so on to the next age group, 8 to 11. Middle childhood. And this is where they are fading. So there's this thing called childhood amnesia. Kids are starting to forget the memories that they've had from 3 years and earlier. And some say it's because maybe their brain's not quite developed, or they don't have the language to be able to encode and retrieve those type of memory. And at this stage, one of the things that really warms their hearts is if you can reminisce on how they were as babies. right? You were a cute little cuddly baby. They might be colicky or crying, but you could say, you were so good. I love holding you, right? And it's just warm and fuzzy inside. That's a great conversation. They love to hear about themselves. And honestly, sometimes we feel like they're behaving selfishly, they're self-centered. But let me tell you, kids need to be self-centered before they can be other-centered. It starts from the self. They need to be able to speak up for themselves, defend themselves, and understand what they need. So that's a great way. They also have an increasing ability to access their own thoughts and emotions. We say metacognition, meta-emotion is a research term where you are thinking about what you're thinking or you're feeling about what you're feeling. So they're able to sort of layer on more complexity, and they're able to understand, I succeed by effort. If I try harder, I have a better chance of succeeding. That is so important. Anybody heard of growth mindset here? Growth mindset. Okay, a few. Oh, okay. So I need to touch on that. Okay. And then friendship networks is also really important, right? So the sense of popularity where you can address it in your conversations. And again, they're learning self-management and stress management skills. And kids at this age, I think one of the things with mental health is that wisdom is sort of having that perspective, right? Especially that long-term perspective of knowing that this shall pass, right? Whatever bad emotions might be. But kids at that age don't have that type of perspective. So in your conversations, don't lecture them, but help them understand by sharing your own experiences of the frustration, right? The enraged moments of injustice, right? And help them understand that this shall pass. It's part of life. Don't try to help them feel better, feel happy all the time. Help them feel what they're feeling and understand it. Okay. So one example, slightly unrelated, but I want to hammer this in, especially at this stage, this time during our life, is this concept of feeling good because you've accomplished something versus feeling good because you got something because you accomplished something. So it's kind of like, yay, you got an A, let's go get ice cream, right? What's our kids going to understand, right? Ooh, yummy ice cream. I feel so good, my tasting buds, right? Whereas I am so proud of myself for getting an A, working so hard, right? And, I get busy, definitely, like many of you too. And sometimes we use it as a reward where, hey, if you do this, you get, 10 minutes of Roblox, 30 minutes of whatever, right? We use it as a reward to motivate them as well. But I just want to caution that we do also want to help our kids understand the difference between the two. Right? Being able to, again, meta-emotion, extract one from the other. And you'll be surprised. When I did this with my undergraduate students, some of them understood. Others, they're like, well, what's wrong with buying a purse and feeling so good about it if I get, straight A's or whatever? Like, this is how I feel good, right? And that is, to be honest, a little bit scary to me. Right? And that kind of has to do with growth mindset. So growth mindset is like another huge buzzword, but essentially it's about studies show that if we believe in that we try really hard using our effort instead of believing in that, I'm smart or I'm just not good at math, like that makes a huge difference in terms of how our kids are motivated, right? Because who would be, who would want to do something if they're just not good at it, right? And if they truly believe from a fixed mindset standpoint, they believe, I'm just not good at writing. So what's the point? I'm not going to write. And it's not fun, right? This becomes a very malicious cycle, right? I believe I'm not good at something. This is going to be my attitude. I don't like it because I'm not good at something. And what am I going to do? I'm going to do all I can to avoid it. Right? So again, when we talk about inspiration, right? The opposite of inspiration is demotivation, right? Not motivated. So when I mentioned growth mindset, at this age is so important to hammer home with our kids to say, in your conversations, to praise them for trying so hard, even if they didn't get what they wanted to do, right? It's kind of like skiing. I'm so excited to be here, by the way, and I think it's snowing tomorrow. It's like skiing, right? It's like you ski down that slope, right? You enjoy the beautiful scenery, that magical quietness, crisp snow, the smell of the air. You might fall, you might tumble, whatever, right? But that is the process you enjoy, you remember. Versus, I made it down to the lift. I'm down, right? That's your destination. So it's just like that. Help your kids appreciate the journey, right? The journey of trying, the journey of putting in that effort so that it becomes addicting, right? Instead of, okay, I need to check this box off. I need to do another thing, and I'm not good at this thing, so I'm just not going to do it, right? So that is so incredibly important. Okay, and I know, again, we're going to have to repeat these things over and over again because sometimes they don't get it, sometimes they forget, and sometimes we forget, right? Sometimes we get mad, sometimes we get impatient. So I've got a card for you to use as well. So for many of us who get it, right, and we want to do it, right, especially we're crunched for time, it's really hard for us to patiently stand there, right? Take 5 breaths, right? Mindfulness, right? When I have a card on mindfulness, right? How many of you have multiple tabs open on your computer, right? Same thing with your head. Yep, my head, multiple tabs, right? When our minds are full, it's really hard to be patient. We are just tapped out, right? So I'm going to give you the strategy to use, and you can actually use it with your children when they are tired, mindful, and just about to blow up, right? You can intervene by taking that elevator down from the volcano. So feeling overwhelmed, you can connect with your 5 senses to slow down. And it's sort of like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You don't have to do in this order, but essentially it's the 5 senses, right? What am I seeing, right? Focus on something. Right now, I'm seeing the really, really glossy and reflective rail, just little things, right? What am I smelling, right? What am I even just feeling? I feel my heart pounding because I feel like I'm going to blow up. I feel impatient, annoyed, irritated, right? If you just tap into those feelings and what just little things to distract you or your kids, it helps you to slow down, to calm down. And as parents, it will buy us some time. We'd be surprised if we just give it 5 seconds to our children after saying, go do your laundry, go do your homework, right? And then they're not moving. We're like, go do it, right? But just give them a few minutes, right? Give them a chance to let it sink in and react while you do this. Yeah? So, okay. Now, developmental ages between 12 to 15, right? This is going into adolescence, and this is where our kids are having erratic sleeping patterns, right? That's expected, right? They sleep later, get up later. Doesn't mean that they're lazy. It just means that they're in this stage of developmental stage. And I have to say, there's tons of sleeping research coming on board, and I cannot emphasize how important it is to sleep. No matter what age you are. It's so important. I'd rather my kids not finish their homework or whatever, but sleep is so important. And for us too. Yeah. Okay. They become really self-conscious. And this is where in our conversations with them, we have to be really mindful and careful, right? Because they have a very, very fragile self-esteem. And this is unfortunately when they really want to do the opposite of what you do. So try not to say, please do this, right? You can use the reverse psychology approach in this case. And this is also where they start to think very complex, right? They understand that if A happens, not necessarily B happens. It could be C, or depending on the context, it could be D. So you can really have some good, rich conversation. Share with them your dilemma in your jobs, right? In life. They love to feel powerful, to feel like they're helping out, right? Let them help you, give you some advice. Have them, engage them as your thought partners. I cannot emphasize how cool it is. And they could be cranky 1 minute, and the next minute, they will be brainstorming and genuinely caring for you by thinking of solutions. This is also a time where, yes, they are likely to rebel, to engage in risk-taking. But, it's if not now, when, right? And again, instead of shielding them, give them the skills, give them the environment where it promotes making mistakes, where they can learn from it. And another thing to think about is this card, identity. They are honing in on who they are, and they want to know, who am I, right? What makes me special? What makes me different, right? And so this card, you can have them describe to you who they are. And by the way, I just have to say, I encourage you to do these cards first, meaning you do it, you role model first. You tell your story before you ask them to do that, right? We don't want to come off as interrogating, like, hey, let's sit down for 5 minutes. Can you please describe yourself, right? Let's not do that. Okay, so I want you to just let me just pause for a quick 15-second. I want you to think of 3 adjectives that you would describe each one of your children, or at least one that you're having particular struggles with. Just think of those 3 adjectives. You can jot it down. You can mentally sticky note it in your mind. Think about it. Yeah? And for those of you on the Zoom, just write it down. Okay. And then think about 3 adjectives that you think they would use to describe you. What 3 adjectives would they describe you? Perhaps to their friends, or to themselves in their diary. Think about that. Okay, so this is your homework today, okay? You can do it whenever, but sync up with them. Just see if how they describe themselves aligns generally with how you would describe them. What do you think? Do you think it's going to match? And you can also ask them how their friends describe them. And in your next parent-teacher conference, you can ask their teachers how they would describe your children, or a sports coach or whatnot, and just see if that is consistent, right? And then you can also ask your children in a way that is appropriate, or that they will take, how would you describe me? Maybe don't ask them when they're mad, of course. And see if that matches with your perception, right? I talked about mirroring. Now I'm going to use the word mirror. Right? This is a great exercise where you are shining the mirror in front of yourself, right? You're checking in to see, is this how my kids see me? Do I look like this in the mirror, right? And do my kids look how I see them, or they see themselves a different way? And in terms of supporting their identity development and truly their passions, their inspiration, and who they are, this is really important to know, to sync up and be on the same page. And, I just have to say, do these look familiar to you, right? Describe who you are. How will your friends describe you, right? I'm going to give you a clue. I was an HR manager. I did recruiting for both incoming and seasoned employees. And I also, as an employee, I worked since I was 15 in just various restaurant, whatever jobs. And in order to get a job, you have to be able to answer that question. Tell me about yourself, right? That's describing yourself. And another question is, why should I hire you, right? What makes you the candidate for this job? This is essentially the same question, right? It's just broken it down in a way that it's digestible for kids. And I also said I'm an alumni admissions for Harvard College and for Berkeley MBA, and I ask this question all the time. So this question is not only useful for just understanding their goals and aspirations, but it's helping them to get a job, to get into college if they want to. So there's so much utility to this question and so much self-awareness involved that I highly encourage you to help them understand themselves and help you get on the same page with them. And if you want to get creative, this is another card, right? If they're like, oh, adjective, so boring, right? For the older ones, those who have TikToks, Instagram, whatever, right? The brand of #me is a great exercise where they can come up with an advertising slogan that they would like people to remember them by. You know, it's something creative, right? Working on creative skills, entrepreneurial skills. And I do this actually with adults a lot. What's their theme song, right? And you can imagine when they're feeling down, when they're feeling like imposters, play the song. Play your theme song, right? Pump yourself up before a game, right? Before something that you're so intimidated by. This is you. This is your song. It taps into who they are, right? And then what type of images and behaviors align with your brand? What is your personal brand, right? Print that out. Print the quote out. Put it on your wall, right? Remind yourself. These are like the essence, right, of who they are. And looking at that, I think pictures and songs are worth, 1,000 words kind of thing, right? They can remind themselves, this is what I want to be, right? This is who I am. So you can do that for yourself too. There's nothing wrong with playing a song. So just before we go into some questions, I also want to share with you, right, how do you start with these conversations, right? Depending on what stage you are. If you are experiencing a lot of conflicts with your children or your child in particular, right, you got to start from the basics. We talked about trust. You have to earn it. Respect. You have to earn it, right? And you earn that through the first step of nurturing. You have to show your children that you care about them, that you are on their team, you love them unconditionally. They don't have to be embarrassed or humiliated because they've done something wrong, right? So that is really the first step. You have to prove to them that you're trustworthy and that you believe in them. Once you get that trust and respect, then you can move on by helping them to flex their goals, their inspirations, right? Their muscles. And that is where you really talk about their passions, what brings them joy, their goals, right? How can I push you to get better and manage your expectations, right? Again, that perspective, that wisdom. And then supporting them along the way, helping them to find their path. Because you've already gained the trust, you guys are on the same page, then helping them along the way, they see it as a positive thing instead of, oh, why are you getting on my case again, right? And then help remind them, because you know what their goals are, you can now use it to remind them, hey, I know you want to play video games, but did you say your goal is this? I would love to do blah, 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 because this is going to help so and so. So these are good, positive reminders. And then partnership is where I mentioned for our adolescents, right? I know I didn't quite touch age 15 and 18. I'm happy to answer that during, the Q&A. But that is incredibly important in terms of partnering your power with your child, right? Help your child become a real member of the family, help out around the family, but also make decisions as a family, right? From as simple as where should we go, vacation or next vacation, or should we get this, furniture, or, anything that appeals to their interest. It will make them feel like a sense of ownership. And guess what? If they buy that particular furniture that they're interested in, they are more likely to take care of it and clean it, right? Upkeep it. Okay, so, a lot of the times we are afraid to ask, to state the elephant in the room, right? We know we can be nagging all the time, right? So just straight up ask, what can I do? Like, I'm on your team. What can I do to be on your team to help you achieve your goals that you said, but without sounding like a nag? Because I understand, I could nag, right? Let them help you come up with these solutions instead of trying to think, oh my God, okay, I'm going to try this, I'm going to do that. Let them do the work for you, right? And then another thing is you can do a family contract or a charter. It doesn't have to be written out, all that stuff, right? It could be as simple as, to strengthen our relationship, we're going to be committed to do this and not this. Simply fill in the blank. And you could do this with your partners or co-parents as well, right? Let's do this. These are our contract, right? It would put everybody in the same page. And so the last one, the central takeaways, what I want to share with you is, engage in these authentic conversations. This is, honestly, if you don't do this, where are they going to get it, right? And share with them how you feel. Authenticity means expressing yourself, who you are. Help them understand who you are, right? Instead of the parent who is command and control, right? See the other sides of you. And again, it's a two-way street, right? So, and then a lot of the times as parents, we get really intimidated because we're like, my head is full, or we don't have enough time. I don't want to start these conversations. But honestly, sometimes these type of nurture moments goes as little as 1 minute while you're waiting in line for something, while you're driving in the car to somewhere, right? In between things, or while you're doing sports or hiking. That is where they are entirely disarmed, right? You guys are walking, enjoying nature, and you just have a chat. Or you just aim for 3 minutes of quality conversation. That's it. You don't have to press the kid for a whole, 30-minute discussion. Start small and be kind to yourself. As long as you're trying, you've succeeded as a parent. Encourage them to explore their emotions, right? As parents, we tend to go, suck it up, right? Oh, it's not a big deal. It's not a big cut, But what they are experiencing, even though you don't feel like it's that big of a deal, is their reality. That is their perception, right? You have to first acknowledge that they are experiencing what they're experiencing. They are perceiving that emotion, and help them to give it a name. You don't have to, you don't have to agree with it, but you accept it, you acknowledge it. Because honestly, when we talk to our partners, talk to our friends, we want to be accepted. We want to be heard. We want to vent, right? We just want people to understand how we're feeling, right? And that's what our kids need as well. And so those emotion wheels, right? Use your progressions. Role modeling, right? You can try to figure out, I've got my grumpy pants on for your little preschoolers. Help them understand what you're experiencing. Or you can use that big old wheel and say, well, I'm feeling this, This is why I'm reacting, maybe not in such a productive manner. And then strength-based lens. I see you guys have positive youth development, and I love that. So it's about strength-focused language, right? I've talked about negative self-talk. How they talk to themselves is how one day they might be treated by others, right? Help them set those positive boundaries. Help them understand their strength, who they are, see themselves in a positive light, understanding that they can change with effort, they can improve with practice, right? So that type of language is also really good for self-motivation and self-confidence. So I want to make time for questions, but I want to keep the slide up. So on my website, there is free online assessments if you want to see, how am I doing in terms of my coping skills as a parent or my teenager, in terms of strategies they use, or am I emotionally intelligent? Feel free to take those free fun quizzes. I also have the parenting myth quiz where there's like facts and myths, little fun quizzes, and how children develop. So that's on there. It's got I think 3 different levels. There's some lessons and podcasts on there. Feel free to use it as a resource. And you can also connect with me here. Okay. So I want to make sure, if you find this useful, this slide is available. So definitely, don't be shy to ask for the slide. But I want to save time for questions. 15 minutes, 14 minutes. And for those of you on Zoom, definitely feel free to type it into the chat.
Anybody souls out there with a question? Reaction? Yes.
Thank you. We have so our daughter is 11 years old, and I have tried to work with her to trust all the time and kind of engage her and nurture her and all of that. And I have found several times that she takes technology. We say Monday through Friday because they do after school programs. We don't have technology. And it has been so many times that, at night I go and I make sure that the lights are off or anything. And she has the technology under the pillow or under the bed. And I keep telling her, I trust you, but why are you keep doing this? So it's like a circle. And at this point, I found it again the other night, and I didn't even tell her anything because, to tell you the truth, I did not know what to say because I didn't want to, again, nag at her or punish. I don't punish, but say, no, you know what, you're grounded or anything. So when you are really trying to do that trust, but she keeps doing what she's not supposed to, what would be a good technique? And I'm so sorry that this example is so specific, but, Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I think I've heard a common, this example happened before, so I feel like that you're not the only one. Trust me, I've definitely heard parents discovering that their children sneaking, right? They're incredibly resourceful. They'll hack it, they'll, hide it, and, it's ingenious, right? How do we what do we do when the trust is violated, right? And I love that you mentioned, you don't want to punish them, right? But there are alternatives to punishment, right? One thing, I think kids do need to understand that there are consequences, right, for bad choices, right, for violation of trust. And it's not like they can just get away with it, right? So what you could do is create a contract with her. If this happens, what happens? Let herself come up with, here are the consequences if I, violate my own sort of boundaries, my mom's trust. And, I do have to say, again, sleep is so important. So I think if you do find that it's happening again and again, at some point there definitely needs to be a boundary. And so what I've seen is, you have those screen time control, right, from this time to this time. I've also heard of apps where it automatically cuts out access to internet or websites, but obviously we don't want to do that, right? I'd rather for her to come up with her own self-reinforced consequence. And I think if you have this trust in this contract, right, and she has, lied, right, then she needs to face the consequences of that. Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else live have a question? We have one we're writing out from Zoom, so that's coming. And just to share the resource from Screenagers, they have a contract on there. So probably if you just Google Screenagers, you can find one and create a co-contract with your daughter. And what's beautiful about it, and it works in my home for whatever that's worth, to Jenny's point, she comes up with her consequences, and she's more likely to stick to it that way.
And Common Sense is another great resource, Common Sense. And they also rank, movies, apps, and all that stuff by age appropriateness.
Jenny, can you say more about feeling embarrassed and humiliated, why that is not good? Aren't those genuine emotions that they can feel as part of accepting consequences for actions?
So I just want to clarify, I did not say feeling it is, okay, so that is normal to feel, right? That's not what I mean, like you shouldn't feel that way. But I think if we are imposing on our children, we're embarrassing our children, right? We're making them feel humiliated with our language, right? For example, I think I said in the context of comparing them to their friends, right, to other people, that is kind of like a form of bullying, right? It's making them feel inferior and feel like they're not worthy. But I think just this, we feel embarrassed, right? We feel embarrassed because embarrassment is when we realize we've done something that is socially inappropriate. And it's good to feel that way because we are sort of self-monitoring. So I'm just saying, don't make them feel that way, but help them understand when they are feeling certain way, maybe this is embarrassment and this is what's happening, right? And humiliating causes shame, right? Embarrassment is when you are feeling inappropriate by yourself and you're embarrassed by it. But shame is when other people are making you feel inferior and embarrassed, right? And humiliated. And that is a huge blow to self-esteem, right? Self-confidence, and especially in public. So that also cuts into our respect to our children.
My question is about my kid. He's 9 years old, and I would like to have a better way to help him to improve, not improve, but to make him feel his self-esteem better. Because when we were talking about describe yourself and ask your parents or ask your teachers and see if everything or a match, and what if it doesn't match? Because as a mother, I will see my kid as a perfect kid, but it's not a perfect kid to somebody else's eyes. So to help him to feel better self-esteem, which is your advice? Because at 9 years old, the biggest influence is your parents and your teachers. I'm a single mom, so it's like double job, and I have to deal with the two of them. What I see on him and what their teachers see on him and how he sees himself. So what would be a best advice from you or from you guys to help him?
Yeah, thank you. So for those of you on that Zoom, just to reiterate, how can we help our children feel self-confident, right? And in the case of exercise that we've done for adjectives, what if it doesn't match, especially in the case where his self-perception is a little bit more negative than how you are as a parent, right? I do want to emphasize that we love our kids just the way they are. We see them perfect, right? But we also want to emphasize to them that there is no perfection. And it's totally okay to be imperfect. In fact, encourage imperfection, making mistakes, right? I love that you love your kids unconditionally. I think if you frame it in that way, like I love you exactly who you are, no matter what, I think that's really going to hammer it home. But don't, like when we use perfect, right, then they will think, well, but I'm not perfect. I don't see myself at perfect. My teacher said I got this grade, I'm not perfect in this, right? So I think it's important to help them understand, even if they make mistake, even if they're imperfect, they are just, you love them no matter what. And in terms of building self-confidence, I think, kids definitely go through stages where they might have say, oh, I'm so stupid. Why did I do this? I can't believe it. I'm so dumb, And so helping them to reframe those language and remind them that no one is perfect in every subject, everything. Use what you're good at, right? And so I'll give you an example. One of my child is, again, they're all very different, right? So one of my twin doesn't remember things as well, especially for history, whereas her twin loves history and can just talk about all the stories and timeline, and he's dominating her, right? And so she began to feel smaller and smaller, right? Oh, why can't I remember? I'm not perfect, right? So, but she loves art. And so I help her understand, hey, use your strength in art to help you remember, because geography, history, whatnot, she'll start drawing out the stories of the history, the progressions, the map, the whatnot, and it tells a story through art, and that actually helped her to remember better. So I think it's a way of, again, having the self-awareness of your strength and your weakness and being able to tap into your strength creatively to complement the parts maybe you're not as confident about. So that's one. And second is no one is perfect. We're all works of progression.
Anybody? We're good? Anybody else in the room? Want to respect your time. We're close to 7:30. I'm going to come up close and personal with you, Jenny. So thank you so much for that conversation. And we have 10 of these essential conversations to give away. And I have a lucky list of 10 people that are in person and 5 people on Zoom. We'll be emailing you that you're the lucky winner. But before we make those announcements, in your eChat parent folder, you have surveys, which we are so grateful for your feedback, and it helps us inform topics that we should be paying attention to and ways we can improve and be better. So if you could spend a few moments filling out that survey, that would help us out. We will share the slides that Jenny has shared with you this evening, and also the video recording. So please, share that far and wide with friends and family, and anyone that would be interested. There's so much great content in here, and I'll say that I was lucky to have this deck in my hands the last 3 days, and I will say I have had the most extraordinary car rides with my 3 girls that I've ever had. So get your hands on these if you're not a lucky winner. Next month, we have Jessica Leahy coming. She wrote The Gifts of Failure, and she'll be presenting at Val Mountain School on March 28th. And then she'll be presenting on the addiction inoculation, her newest book, and what she considers her greatest work at Battle Mountain High School on March 29th. So we'll have marketing out for that coming up soon. Anything else, Madison? That's it. Share the information. We're grateful. Take good care of each other. Visit Jenny Wu online and wherever she is. And then I'll make a quick announcement of the winners here. So we have Alex Thrasher. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, Michelle, that box is right back there. Rebecca Pelican, Chrissy Davis, love being a winner, Jake Hesseltine, Marseille, am I saying that right? Paragode, you're a winner. Sean Histed, Martha Burgess, Marcette Gordon, yeah, Marcette, Kelly Straight, Amy Most, and Vera Gamboa. Okay, those are our winners and Zoom winners. We'll email you. Take care of each other. See you soon.